And welcome back, everyone, for yet another episode of the Economic Preppers. I'm joined, as always, by my two co-hosts, Patrick and Dylan. How you doing, guys?
Doing great. Fantastic. Happy to be here.
Yeah, we
Let's
got a
get
lot.
to it.
Let's go. We got a lot going on, so let's go ahead and share our first story. Let's see. Here we go. And we got a lot going on in the world. I'm going to run through a couple different stories that we all saw this week. The rand is plummeting again. We have more financial issues. South Africa, they're dealing with the international news a lot that we're talking about here. Supply chains. Everybody's concerned about who's supplying things through Russia. We've also got Liechtenstein just accepting now Bitcoin payments. So there's a lot of economic news there. We've got Pakistan releasing. They're getting their leader released. So we got plenty to talk about that. But what I really wanted to drill in today is this is a story out of Zero Hedge. It's not hard to see any inaccurate information on anything. So with all these different stories that's going on about the different things that are in the world today, the question that this one that really asks, and I'm going to turn it over to you guys, is that can we trust anything? Is this all a distraction? Is all these different stories that we're hearing about world leaders either getting accused of things or former world leaders accused of things? Are they in the U.S. and abroad? And we have they're becoming political prisoners, or they're just losing power. Is this a distraction for the economy? Or are they trying to get us to not look at the economy that's happening all over? Or are they actually doing bad things? Or is it a little bit of both? Is it all things happening? Is the whole thing coming down all at once? And there's some of these stories as distractions. So, Patrick, what are your thoughts on all these different stories?
All warfare is based on deception. So therefore, I believe nothing I see. I believe in God, I believe in Glocks, and I believe in the blockchain. But I don't believe anything they're telling us. I think that what we're looking at here, some of it may be truth, some of it may be truth fluttered with untruth, some of it may be flat out lies, and some of it may be like, oh my gosh, there's a plane that flew into a building. Not really. It was just an elephant whale coming out of nowhere. Like, who knows what Operation Bluebeam is and how it works anymore. So is it true? Is it untrue? But does it matter is the question. Is it relevant? I would say the answer is no. What we see happening in South Africa with the rand going down in value doesn't really surprise me, considering that Durban's coming up for their summit in August. What do you think they're going to set the narrative for right before that? Guys, here we are going into summer. We knew this was going to happen. We just didn't know what it was going to look like.
Right. Dylan, there's a lot of dominance of the news cycle. They're fighting for everything. Mm-hmm. Is this all distractions? Like the timing is really critical, how they just seem to have just flood the news at just the right time to push other stories down into page 2 or even out of the news cycle. What are your thoughts?
This just reminds me of the phrase "rules for thee, but not for me." And so, the global elites, the people in charge, the people with like trillions of dollars, they don't operate on the same rules. So, what is bad behavior in the eyes of the people, for them, that's just a normal day, right? They do that all the time. It's not a big deal. They have to operate like that. So, if you have competing groups at that scale, if they're big, giant, massive entities, they're going to move more slowly with these small strategic things. And so a little positioning here, a little FUD over here, maybe they throw someone under the bus over here, right? And it's all for this bigger game that they're playing. So that's what it seems like to me, that this is all like, and so if you want to take a step back, you got to look at the bigger picture and try to escape the little box that they've put you in as a civilian. Or just as a normal everyday person in the world. And you got to see like what's really going on and what's happening. And we've kind of talked about that. We're seeing shifts in the, financial infrastructure that on a major scale. So that stuff is coming up and happening. And so that's the thing to pay attention to. All these other little things, I think they're mostly just distractions.
Yeah, I tend to agree with what the media is doing, what the world stage is doing, all the different things that are happening. Like we have news, like we have information that's coming out literally this week about the U.S. president and his family, but that's getting pushed off the front page because of the person who was in front of him and served the previous 4 years, and how the issues that are going on in New York, which are completely ridiculous, and how other stories are seeming to dominate the cycle. So it really does seem to be like they're pushing what should be on page 1 as far back into the newspaper, if you remember newspapers, as possible, but off the headlines for sure. But as we start to look at the U.S. stuff, we got a lot there too. So let me share some of those stories. We've got right away on yet another bank. Okay, we'll talk about this too, but PacWest is having issues, and they seem to be going belly up. They're having problems. We have Janet Yellen out there. She's talking about the debt ceiling, how big that could threaten the U.S. economy. And then we had the CPI came out this week and PPI, which were more in line. CPI came out at 4.9, and then the PPI I think came in at 2.3. So along with the job numbers that seem to be like job claims are the unemployment is much higher than expected, which is kind of where they want to manage the dollar and the economy system. So we'll get to the Dixie next, but with those stories, guys, we've got a lot. Patrick, I want to throw it to you about the Dixie. What are you seeing as far as the dollar and the general trend here?
So we got to remember when we talk about the Dixie, we got to remember that it's measured against a basket of currencies. So it's not just the US dollar that we're looking at. We're looking at the US dollar in relative value to these other nations' fiat currencies. And by far the largest one of those is the euro. It makes up like over half of the index alone. So I believe that when you look at Japan making up close to like a little over 10%, I don't know all the exact numbers. Canada is also another one, like I believe 10% is Canada. So you start to look at the dollar's relationship to fiat in other nations. What this is telling us is yesterday, based off of the news, the dollar got stronger. So dollar got stronger. It takes less dollars to buy Bitcoin, which is what we saw happening again yesterday, Bitcoin dipping under 27.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about the DXY in a moment. But Dylan, these stories, I mean, you got anything from the debt ceiling to all the other things that are going on, the CPI index, like what should the average consumer be focused on at this point?
I think not those things. I mean, I think it's important to be aware of them, but you need to start taking action. And so things just like reducing unnecessary expenses, moving wealth from things that are fully dependent on the fiat system into things that might be independent. Things like gold, silver, Bitcoin. Guns are an option as well. Things that will hold value over time that isn't completely dependent on what's happening in the fiat world. That's going to be critical. If you can increase your cash flow during this point in time, that's also important. So maintain that high level of cash flow. And if you have money on the side, keep an eye out for what industries you think there'll be opportunities in. And so instead of just focusing on these constant news articles, you need to be taking action to position yourself for success versus just crossing your fingers and hoping that your current situation isn't impacted by the upcoming storm.
So I'm going to pose this question to you guys, and this is Patrick. I'm going to come to you with this first, but you hinted at this, and I highlighted here the Dixie. Okay, it's basically made up of 4 different countries' currency. It's over 90% the euro, which is almost 60% of it, the Japanese yen, the British pound, and the Canadian dollar. You've got, I think that's like Switzerland and I think one other country in there too. But for the most part, you get those
the Swedish krona.
Yeah, so you got Sweden and Switzerland in there, but for the most part, you got 4 countries, 4 dominant countries that are comparing to the U.S. dollar. You got Japan, Great Britain, Canada, and the euro, the European Union. So the question is this an adequate reflection of where we're heading on the planet? Like this seems to be the Western world comparing themselves to the Western world. Like who's the most dominant player in the SWIFT system? With what BRICS is about to launch in a few months, is the DXY going to become less and less relevant going forward?
Are you asking me? Because I could give. Oh, okay. Yes, the DXY will become less and less relevant because, okay, let's take a step back, right? We know that CBDCs are coming. And so as you see nations starting to use their native digital currency, you no longer have the one thing that cash allows us to do, which is obscure what is happening with the money. As soon as we have an actual data set that allows us to understand where the money is actually coming and going between countries, that'll allow us a tool not just based off of value, but based off of utility. And I believe that eventually it won't matter. It will all be a relative value to Bitcoin. Everything will have a Satoshic value. That is the way I see things going.
Interesting take there. So Dylan, we got the world stage. Everybody's like the condition of the dollar, condition of the Dixie somewhat. Do you think that these other currencies, as they come on stage, are they going to recalculate there's going to be something different than we watch in the DXY as these new world currencies, as these CBDCs come out? There's going to be new bases of comparison that people use.
I mean, they'll be factored in there, but they might just do like they do with inflation and just change the basket of goods, right? Change the basket of currencies they measure the U.S. dollar against. So, that could be a thing. And then also, I think that it's highly plausible that the dollar strengthens because you have all these other currencies that weaken over time, especially if resources and attention aren't being given to them or they're struggling. So I think that's something we could see. But I kind of like where Patrick's head is at, is when we see a shift in the major thing we use to measure other things against, that maybe a new, better thing can take its place. And that new, better thing being Bitcoin, I'd be in favor of that.
Imagine this, guys. I'll pose a different question. What if China comes out tomorrow and says the value of an ounce of gold is let's say it's 50 million sats? What does that mean to you, Jeff? If they just said, hey, we're no longer going to value our gold in any denominated fiat, we're going to value it in Satoshis, and it's now worth 50 million Satoshis.
Mm-hmm.
Wow,
what does that do tomorrow? Does it impact the value of gold or so 50 million Satoshis is half a Bitcoin.
Yep.
So now 42 million ounces. So you're saying that's equal to an ounce of gold?
1 ounce of gold.
So now I didn't need to say how many ounces of gold are there on the planet. And I don't know. I couldn't convert 3 Olympic size.
But would the value of gold change, or would the value of fiat change based on that?
That's a good question.
You're stealing my thunder for later there, Patrick. But let's pause on that conversation, because I'll phrase it a different way a little bit later, but it's an interesting one. I don't know the dynamics of, if you're talking about the dynamics of, if you're saying that right now that they say Bitcoin, half a Bitcoin is an ounce of gold, I'd be comparing, contrasting what
happens to the value of the dollar tomorrow, though. Is it the value of Bitcoin that goes up to $100,000, or is it the value of the dollar that just goes to garbage?
I think it depends on the who's making that announcement and how much supply that they control.
China, with all the gold, they get the call. They're going to come out and they make the call. China said it.
Yeah, I think that I think a commodity revaluation would be coming. So
what would happen is everyone in the United States would go buy gold right now, or they'd go buy Bitcoin right now, just so they could go over there and get their gold. They're going to get all the Bitcoin from them. They're going to create an arbitrage event, driving down the value of the dollar, because the dollar will be less relevant than ever before. All that changed there is we talk about the dollar less. As soon as they start valuing it in sats, fiat's done, bro.
I think there would be I think there'd be a lot of change on the horizon very, very quickly, even faster than we expect. And there would be a lot of those who control the dollar would try to control the system of getting out of the dollar.
China's got some Bitcoin.
I hear you. I'm just saying, as for an American citizen, they're probably going to be hammered by regulations through the choke point, which we've seen for the last several months. Like you're not going to be very easily able to get dollars into Bitcoin or gold at that point. That's going to be a challenge.
Yes. Which will make the value of it go up that much more.
What's the id in that sentence?
Dollar. It'll make the value of Bitcoin go up much more, because if you can't get it, if they're going to say, hey, the banks are not allowing you to take $5,000 and send it to Coin Trading Company, then your Bitcoin is now so rare. It's like when they stopped doing guns and they stopped doing private gun sales in Oregon. I know people who don't even purchase guns anymore, because to them, they don't want them tracked. So when you have Bitcoin that's not tracked, that's something that's like so much more valuable.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think that we'd see like the kind of arbitrage we're seeing in these other countries where their currencies are dying, like in Argentina. Like we talked about that last week, I think, of an Argentinian premium on Bitcoin, because you can't get, it's not easy to get out. Like I think it's the bolivar they use in Argentina, or the peso. You can't get from Argentinian currency easily to Bitcoin, because no one wants the thing you're trying to get away from. That's how the dollar would start to feel.
See, that's what kind of happens when you start asking me what's going to happen to DXY, and you ask me to hypothesize about what may happen with Bitcoin.
Well, we
That's
have
where
another
my head
one later
goes.
when we talk gold. We'll ask a similar question, but a different phrasing. But right now, it's time to turn over to crypto, and I think that's another topic that people like. But maybe not this other topic as we talk about. We're going to talk about the IRS at the same time too. So this is a story that came out on Zero Hedge. And for everybody who's followed the FTX saga, and there's always seems to be at least one or two working sagas in crypto. First we had Luna, then we had FTX. But the IRS is filing a $44 billion claim against bankrupt FTX. And if you read down further in the article, which I did, they actually applied. They filed what they call for administrative priority, which means that they are creditor number one. They're ahead of everybody else when it comes to selling out. So what that means is, in layman's terms, if FTX ever comes, or Alameda as well, if they come up with some liquid funds, the IRS would get first dibs. They would be the first one to get paid out of this $44 billion claim. So, all right, Patrick, I got to lead off with you again.
I am so hot on this topic. It makes me so angry.
All right, I'm going to make you wait because I haven't heard from Dylan in a while. So, Dylan, tell me what you think about the IRS and FTX.
Man, of course they would do something like that.
Of course.
And, like, I don't necessarily feel bad that FTX is, getting just hit from all these directions. They deserve that. But, it's just kind of, it's just the system that we live in where the IRS basically is the big bully that just gets to move the line like this and be like, all right, we're first. We get taken care of first before anyone else. And so, like, that's the unfortunate thing about it from my perspective.
Until they finally challenge the IRS's validity, but that's another conversation all entirely. But Patrick, I know you're waiting.
I am so hot on this because I see this a lot different than Dylan, like a lot different.
Okay.
I have friends of mine who lost a lot of money in FTX. That's their damn money. You have no right to it. Are you guys kidding me? Like, this money should go back to the thousands of people who lost their livelihoods. And instead, you've got the mob coming in saying, we're going to take it first. Are you kidding me? This is absurd.
I'm on the same page as you, Patrick. Like, it is messed up that the individuals that did lose their money now they were first in line. And then now you had the IRS basically just shove them out of the way and say, nope, you're no longer first in line. And now you basically have no chance of getting anything or any percentage relative to the percentage of money you had in their back. I think that's
almost $8 billion. They found money. I don't know where they found it, but they got it. And now the government wants it plus times 5. Are you kidding me?
Well, if CZ or someone similar happens to be listening, what I would propose is I would reach out to FTX or Alameda, and if they find any currency, they should make up a fund for these people in Bitcoin, in an international profile, and let them be disseminated in Bitcoin, and just take it away from the IRS's opportunity, because I'm sure the IRS is not going to be able to get the Bitcoin. Let them go after it, because
my comments are going to get us banned, but your comments not going to get us banned. That's the one that's going to get us in trouble, Jeff. That one.
The IRS. Well, the IRS is voluntary if you look deeply at the form.
They also got lots of guns and ammo now.
No, they don't. That's the fallacy. See, there's such a fallacy with the IRS. Okay, the IRS. Everybody thinks they hired 87,000 people. No, they didn't. Bro. They opened up 87,000 requisitions. They didn't actually get 87,000 employees.
One of the favorite shows that I like to attend is called SHOT Show. SHOT Show happens in Vegas, where a lot of companies from the firearms industries from all over come. And one common theme is increased production for the federal government, specifically going to this contract. Everything from ammo producers to the box manufacturers are reporting it. It's happening. I don't know what it's for, but they're gearing up. That's bucket one, and you could take that to the bank.
What contract are you referring to, Patrick?
There's like box making companies, like Winchester's one of the companies that provides a lot of stuff. Remington does a lot of stuff.
Okay.
The people that make primers for the back of the 5.56 cartridges that they use, because the military uses a different special type of projectile in their 5.56. So the casing looks different.
Yeah, and Patrick, was if you guys are interested in that sort of topic to learn more, we'll be offering that later on as we start to build out our coursework for economic preppers. But Dylan, any final thoughts on this IRS story before I move on to the next crypto one?
I just can't wait for the day where they aren't a problem.
Yeah. Well, now, Dylan, I'm going to talk about that logo on top of your hat, which we all know and love is Bitcoin. But there was a lot going on with Bitcoin this week. And I know that, like Patrick, I know that we heard about this. Dylan, I'm sure you did too. What was it, 11,000 JPEGs or virtual NFTs that were created called ordinals that they try to put onto the network, which is creating all kinds of havoc and log jams. To me, it's kind of CryptoKitties 2.0. It's what happened in Ethereum a couple of years ago with clogging up their network. But Patrick, why don't we start with the basics? Can you explain for the average listener or viewer here, what's an ordinal? What does that mean?
So for simplicity's purposes, ordinals are like NFTs on the Ether blockchain or a lot of other blockchain. It's a means of creating like a Bitcoin data-specific, non-replicable data set or image that doesn't exist on a separate layer from Bitcoin's core layer 1 blockchain. So what you see people doing right now, in essence, they're not changing anything with the Bitcoin protocol. They'll take like one Satoshi out of, the 100 million. And what they do is they write data to that section and they can upload data. This, we're not going to go into the history of how this got here, but what's happening is they're uploading data into the blockchain, causing some congestion because it's limiting out Bitcoin's capacity to process it. But one thing we're missing here is the nature of Bitcoin solves this. Satoshi solved this problem. The luck and difficulty factor, they change every 2 weeks. So as the luck factor changes and difficulty factors change, the confirmations will become regular again.
Interesting. So it's interesting that, Dylan, how this came to be. And then we've got this log jam, similar to what happened with CryptoKitties, where everybody was trying to use the network and they couldn't. There's lots of theories out there. Like the fees are going up too. In order to jump ahead, you basically created like this paywall to get into the front of the line. You have to pay the miners more. So I wonder, any conjecture, any thoughts or hypothesis? So like, did the miners do this to try and raise their fees? Did someone just they try to hurt the Bitcoin network? What are your thoughts about this process? And is it going to get better in about 2 weeks when they start to reset things?
Yeah. So I think it's fascinating. I think it's a really good conversation because there's a camp of people out there, and this kind of came up. I think it was during the block size wars, where they were like, Bitcoin can't scale because its blocks are too small. With too small of blocks, you can't fit enough transactions in those blocks, and therefore the fees won't be able to sustain the security of the network. That was kind of a general argument, and so you had blockchains like Bitcoin Cash. Hard fork off of Bitcoin, and we've seen our hard fork off of Bitcoin Core, and we've seen like Bitcoin Cash just basically has been going towards zero since it forked relative to Bitcoin, right? Just showing that there's not a huge market demand for these other blocks out there, and then people have been recently saying, "Oh, Bitcoin's going to die because the fees aren't sustainable," and listing all these other things, but what we're seeing right now is a use case that there's participants in the market that are willing to pay to utilize that block space. I think this wasn't the first time, but it was there. I think it was a time back in like 2017, maybe one time before, where the fees for a block were greater than the actual Bitcoin reward for that block. So miners are making a killing right now. And it's just like if there's market incentives to do something, it'll play out. And I think that's what we're seeing right now is that there's a market incentive to be able to play around with these ordinals and these inscriptions and to add arbitrary data to the Bitcoin blockchain. And we'll see how that plays out. And I think it's a good thing for the blockchain overall. I pretty much have a stance that Bitcoin needs to be attacked from every single direction by every single type of attack if it's going to do what we want it to do. Because the last thing you want is some chain that is only exists because you had basically an overbearing mother in the form of the community blocking in all challenges to that. You want every challenge and you want it to survive. So I think that's going on now. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out going forward and what type of new developments come from this.
Yeah, it's interesting. Whenever I see an attack on one of these projects, I always wonder who's benefiting from it, who could be benefiting from it. Follow the money, see who is it. Like this could be another part of Choke Point 2.0 of just limiting people to get onto Bitcoin, or is it the miners trying to increase their returns, or it's just an attack on Bitcoin in general for people that don't like crypto and want you to stay in the dollar system. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. We're already seeing a few other actions as we close out the crypto era. We've seen the Bittrex has finally gone under. I know a lot of OGs used to use Bittrex. It was there was Bittrex and Poloniex and Bitfinex. They were the smaller players before the Coinbases became bigger. But now Bittrex is now out of the U.S. We have the Silk Road issue, which is going with Bitcoin. We have Venmo that just came up as an on-ramp, but you can't pull your coins out of there yet. They don't have that feature. So it's still evolving. It's still a lot going on, and it's going to be interesting to see how all this plays out. But as we as we've talked about the digital form of gold, now we should talk about gold itself. So, Patrick, I know you want to talk about pricing things in terms of Bitcoin. So let me pull up that chart, and I'll let you go on with your discussion here.
Yeah, so I'm working on this basic premise that I believe Bitcoin will be the means of valuing anything in the future. So based on this, I'm looking at silver prices. And if you look, Jeff, click on the all-time history. Today, it costs you 92,000 sats to be able to buy an ounce of gold. Back, let's just say in 2015, it would cost you, what, 7 million?
Mm-hmm.
6 million, 7 million sats to buy silver. The question is, how many ounces of silver can you buy with 100,000 sats in the future? And that's where my head goes, is if you start to look at that, Jeff, back out of here, instead of 92,000 sats for an ounce, and clearly we're not even talking long ago, 7 years ago. Let's go back and we'll go look at the gold chart as well. The gold chart will tell you something very similar under the precious metals. If you look at the all-time, you'll see the same story. It takes you less Satoshis to buy the same ounce of gold. Today, it takes you roughly 7,500,000 Satoshis to buy an ounce of gold.
Which is how much an ounce. That's just to interject. That's how much an ounce of silver cost in 2015.
Yes, exactly. So I think you kind of made my point. That was my point, is let's start looking at things and valuing it based on a relative value of measure that the entire globe recognizes. We have never had that before. Gold and silver were those measures. So if we're not going to value gold in dollars, what are we going to value it in? And that's where I come in and say it's Satoshis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, there's a book out there by, I think it's like Knut Svanholm, I think that's his name. It's everything divided by 21 million. So it's basically the idea that and it's this mindset too, is that if you can start denominating everything in Bitcoin, right, you'll start to really see what's happening, because Bitcoin is one of the only things out there, if not the only thing, that is stable, right? We know exactly what it is, right? We know exactly how many Bitcoin are going to exist, when they're going to come out. And so it's like using a ruler that never changes. So if everything else changes around the ruler, you know the ruler is consistent. But if everything else changes around the ruler and the ruler changes, which is how it is with the dollar, which is how it is with gold, it is with silver, how it is with other fiat currencies, you can't possibly get an accurate measurement. So I really like where your head is at there, Patrick.
I mean, and think about this too. Say to somebody, you own, like, let's say you live in $1 million house, right? $1 million house, something beautiful. And people look at you and go, what's your payment? And you say, I own it. I own it, right? In the future, people are going to ask, you own your Bitcoin? Like, You own your Bitcoin. It's more valuable than a house. It won't be a flex to own a home or a sports car. Those things are literally everywhere. One of 21 million Bitcoin. I-
Well,
Man,
I did the other week. I did some rudimentary math and looked at the global real estate market of. I think it was like 300 trillion U.S. dollars of global real estate. I think it's more than that, but I'd use that as the benchmark number. And I was like, okay, if you own 1/21 millionth of the total real estate market in the world, it'd be about 14 million or so dollars of real estate that you would need to own and control outright. $14 million is a lot of real estate to be able to own and control outright, right? Very few people can do that. A lot of people own that much real estate, or they have it under their control, or it's in their name, but they don't actually own it because there's a mortgage on there. It's in a city. They got to pay taxes. Bitcoin is one of those things. If you own one Bitcoin, and right now it's like what, $27,000 or whatnot.
$26,945.
Perfect. Even better. It's on sale.
Yes,
right?
please hear us.
If it does become that global base layer and everything's denominated in it, like one Bitcoin is easily more valuable than $14 million worth of real estate now, because you can exchange it for anything, right? Anywhere in the world instantaneously. So, and you have full control over it.
Yeah, I just to bring that point home, and building on a couple things that you said, Dylan. I hear this time and time again from Bitcoin maximalists and Bitcoin pundits all the time. I think Robert Breedlove loves to mention this. It's the only asset class that we will know how much there's ever going to be, because like you don't find more gold, oil, gas, steel, make more steel, whatever, but the rate of inflation that I originally thought that the 2% that they try to shoot for which is really an arbitrary number if you go and study that. But like the rate of determining or finding more gold is historically 1 or 2% a year. So that's kind of in line with what they say is inflation, but you can't dig into the earth and find more Bitcoin. You can't just, you won't find an asteroid flying by that has more Bitcoin on it. It's, how much there's ever going to be. Plus we've also talked about the stories where anywhere from 3 to 6 million of the 21 million could be lost forever. So there's an asset class which there's actually
and
probably
imagine
less.
Holding money, Jeff, where you hold money, you work for 30 years, 40 years. You do such a good job. You got $1 million in your bank account in 2000, and then everything happens. And the next 10 years, your $1 million can't buy you a home. Like, this is a problem. We know with Bitcoin exactly what the inflation rate is.
Yep.
And it's also because of the conflation between money and currency. Money does not equal currency. What you're saying there, your exact story, Patrick, should be told, but with the word currency instead of money, because the dollar bill is not money. The difference between money and currency is that money holds value over time. That's why when we talk about that, the man's suit has always been an ounce of gold, either from a suit of armor all the way to an Armani suit. It's about an ounce of gold. So gold holds its value over time because you can exchange it for an asset of similar like throughout history. You can't with the dollar. We see those charts of the dollar just erodes.
Hey, bro, just so you know, you can't buy an Armani suit for 1 ounce of gold anymore. Okay. Like Armani is,
Well, that gets to my next question, which is the other way I wanted to phrase this question from earlier, which is that what would happen if another country, take China or any other one, says that gold is now worth $20,000 an ounce instead of $2,000? What would happen throughout the world economic marketplace? What would happen to the price of Bitcoin and other precious metals and such? How do you think that would play out? Because it would be dynamic and it would be rapid. So I know Patrick he's thinking hard through this one. So I'm going to go to you first, Dylan. What do you think would happen if China came and said, instead of $2,000 an ounce, gold's now $20,000?
They'd have to be able to enforce that. That's the first thing. So if gold can be sourced elsewhere, it will be sourced elsewhere. If they all of a sudden 10x the price of gold, they would have to ensure that anyone buying gold from them would pay them that. That'd be the first critical component there. So you definitely see China wouldn't be able to sell its gold on the market. It might, maybe internally, if companies or businesses are using gold to back as collateral for anything, maybe it'll work for their favor. but why would you buy gold from China for 20,000 if you could get it from the United States for 2,000?
What if it was the reverse? What if they were actually saying you could buy an ounce of gold from China, but it costs you $20,000? Maybe maybe because of international debts, they want the dollars to be able to pay things off and get rid of the dollars.
What do you mean by that?
Well,
yeah.
I mean, what if China owes a debt in dollars to another nation?
Mm-hmm.
In order to do that, they say, well, you know what? We're gonna we'll give you an ounce of gold, but it's going to take $20,000 instead, or we'll give you you can get more money for your gold on that side, so they'd actually get more dollars.
Yeah, but then that'd be them basically just being able to force that type of exchange rate.
Yeah,
and so like they could do that for the countries they have that leverage on. At least that's my perspective on this. Like, if they did any sort of like major, because I guess it seems the question is like if they changed the prioritization of gold in the market of exchanges, right? They might just draw more liquidity in there, so that would increase the value of their gold holdings. If they made,
I think more gold would head in that direction though, because
absolutely. If I found out that you just told me China is paying $20,000 an ounce of gold, first thing I'm gonna do is go sell everything I have to get as much gold as possible. And that will be on my way up to the airport flying to China. As I sell it, I am going to take the cash and I'm going to wire it to my buddy Glenn at Coin Trading Company. I'm going to say, turn it into some sats for me. And then I'm going to get more Bitcoin. And then I'm going to email Todd or maybe Andy from like Miles Franklin, say, get me more gold. And I'm going to keep arbitraging that as fast as I possibly can. And what you're going to have is China ending up with a whole ton of gold, a crazy devaluation of the dollar based on the fact that gold has gone up, and a crazy flex because it's not just China, it's the BRICS nations.
I agree with that. They create arbitrage there, but wouldn't they have to buy up a bunch of dollars to be able to do that? Afford that for a period of time?
Dollars are just printed in thin air. They just got to trash their bonds.
Not from China.
They'll just cash in their treasuries, bro. They don't care. The dollar's going down. Japan, China, they've got a ton of treasury bills from the US. They don't care. They see the writing is on the wall. It's like when you're knowing that Bitcoin is about to tank, it doesn't matter if you sell at 60, 58, 57, 56, just sell the damn thing because you're going to be buying again at 15. Okay, sell. We don't care how low it goes and how much pain or pressure it causes to us because we don't need the dollars anymore. The only thing we needed dollars for was to pay you schmucks back.
Yeah, this could wind up being like another form of Operation Sandman, where they
is World War III. If you say that, I don't know if I could go to China. That would be World War III. Yeah, that's World War.
Yeah, it's an economic world war by just reevaluating
China to sell our gold. Americans won't be able to leave and go to China. It won't matter. They'll just shut the border down. That's probably what would really happen. National crisis. No one can leave to go to China.
Well, a change in the global scale is something that we could see in August. I mean, that's something that could be on the horizon. There's been talk for years about revaluation. There was a revaluation in the United States. It happened in the 30s when they confiscated gold and moved the price from 14 to 21 and 21 to $35. So that did happen. It's happened. It's happened lots of times in the past. It's just has not happened in recent memory. So, or certainly not in the United States or close to someone in the United States. It's happened in other countries, but let me wrap up our show with a little bit more of lightheartedness. And first off, let's talk about prepping. We've got a particular shirt that I want to share. So Dylan, this is yours. I'm going to let you introduce it.
All right. Yeah. So here we have a sun shirt. So it doesn't matter necessarily the brand, but for prepping, we know the sun can drain your energy. It can burn you. It can, cause skin cancer. It's not good to get a ton of sun exposure, but it's also not good to put on a ton of sunscreen because we know there's a lot of chemicals in that. And so these are shirts that fishermen use a lot of times, or people that work outside, and they have a hood. They're lightweight, they're breathable, and they protect you from the sun. So I think it's worth getting some of these if you're going to the beach, if you're going to be outside, if you are especially fairer skinned, just so you don't get hit by the blast from the sun or are forced to put on a ton of sunscreen. I know I use it, and I whenever I go paddleboarding or I'm outside in the summer, I love having these shirts because then I don't got to worry about coating myself with sunscreen, and I can be outside, have fun, expose myself to the sun when I want, and then put the shirt on, put the hood up, and then I'm covered.
Yeah, well,
For those of you who can't relate to Dylan at all, who have no idea why you would need one of those things, or have never used sunscreen before, I would encourage you to take that same dollar amount and invest it in a silver coin. Maybe a little bit more helpful than a shirt for me. I love the sun. I don't feel drained. When the sun hits my body, it's like God created my body being 100-degree desert weather. I love it. I thrive off of it like Superman.
Not everyone's as lucky as you, Patrick, to be able to thrive off the sun like Superman.
Yeah, but it is a good reminder for you that have fairer complexion wives. I should be thinking about that. Yeah. That's something. My wife has gotten sun poisoning before, actually, in Mexico. It's pretty terrible. So really do consider those. I know, like, being serious, my wife does use those, especially when we go on trips. And ever since she started using them, no more like sun rash stuff that has ever happened. So that heat really gets to you guys.
Yeah, especially if you're traveling or going someplace that's ultra sunny or like it's more intense, like Florida. They're good to have. I've had them. I've had stuff like that in Myrtle Beach. They come in handy too because of all the sun you get there.
Mm-hmm.
So
I would laugh at you guys so hardcore, just so you know. Like, I'm sorry, I love you guys for sure, but I just don't have your problems at that part.
But you will see there are some dark fishermen, fishing guides that cover every inch of their skin because they're out on the water.
They don't want cancer.
I mean, that's the thing. They're dark and they could definitely handle the sun like you, Patrick. But they're still out there when they're doing guiding services. Their hands are covered, their face is covered. They more like
You're right. That's something that I see out there when they're out there working all the time. And I guess if that world comes, maybe I should invest in one of those too.
Yeah.
But they got to make something a little less girly, like an all black version or something.
There's all black versions. I don't know if you want that for the sun, but you can.
Let's see. Is there an all black for? Whoops.
Maybe not from this particular company.
But they do have them. They do have them in darker prints for sure. So they have stuff out there.
Yeah, I'm feeling that. Let's get me one of those.
Well, speaking of and not knowing a world like this, let's talk about in our last topic, alternate worlds. So I know that Dylan, you talked a lot about AI. You got two different stories here that'll lighten the mood a little bit. First off, we got AI in online gaming environments. Is this what you go ahead with this one?
Yeah. So Ellio, shout out to Ellio. He's built a good following and he does a consistent channel. He's been doing it for years there, but his angle is crypto gaming. And he's like, that's going to be the future. And one question that I want to get answered that I just haven't seen enough information on is what will be the impact on, if you read the tweets here, on crypto gaming in the face of AI. And so if you look at his first thing, he says AI wipes out major chunk of jobs, 20% of jobs, right? If AI moves into job fields, why wouldn't it move into online gaming? What particular about crypto gaming? And like, I'm legitimately asking this question. What in particular about crypto gaming prevents AI to move into that space, especially if there's a monetary incentive to play the crypto games, right? Why wouldn't AI take over? Like, it seems that the digital realm is where AI thrives the most and would have a greater foothold. Like, we're not seeing as much AI out in the fields farming right now, right? We're not seeing that. So that's my big question. And so it's good that he responded, but he's like, he doesn't know. And his theory is that humans will need gaming to cope with their lack of utility in society. But I'm skeptical on that there'll be hugely monetized games in the scenario of that, maybe niche games and things like that. But I'm curious what you guys think about that.
That's a fair question. It's one tough to answer. I think you'd almost have to have like some kind of human check or something that like to play the game, kind of like we see like click the fire hydrants kind of thing, so the AIs aren't playing them. But yeah, it's a real problem. It's a problem you don't necessarily think about unless you're in those worlds. But yes, I think anything where it's there's a monetary incentive that you can automate. You'd be competing against AI, which wouldn't be a fair playing field, no matter what it would be.
Yeah, it's
So
already they've already made an AI system that beat the best player in the world at Go, which is more complicated than chess.
yeah.
Right. And so maybe like there's limitations there. It seems like adding a human check in the online realm, it doesn't seem like we're very good at that. Maybe we develop that, but it doesn't seem like that seems like an area that we might never be able to fully do, to make sure that you know that you're interacting with a real person online, especially if you've seen some of the AI stuff currently, which is rudimentary at best, but still fakes people out.
Since Patrick's deep in thought here, I'm going to present the other story that you brought, Dylan, and maybe that will round out his, or help crystallize his thoughts to help us round out the show here. But this is the story.
Yeah.
An AI virtual girlfriend.
Yeah. So this is going to happen. and this is crazy. So if you're out there doing OF work,
yeah, OnlyFans for those who aren't paying attention.
Yeah.
Dylan, what is ringing right now?
Oh, that was my phone.
Do you see me calling you?
I did. I silenced it.
You're real?
I'm real. As far as I know. I don't know if you're real, but I think you are. I expect
I don't know anything anymore. This is absolute ridiculous conversation. The fact that we're talking AI, I hate it. I don't want to know. I hate that there are people out there that I have to worry about that are that devious to ruin games. Like, come on, it's a game.
Yeah, but if you put a monetary incentive behind it, people are going to try and get the upper hand to win that money, right? Because if AI is taking over jobs, obviously it's profit minded, or people behind it are profit minded, and they clearly, it has a niche there, right? Or it has a competitive
probably
advantage.
Happening already, Dylan.
Yeah, of course it is. Where it can happen, it's going to happen. And like the next story was, like there's so much money in OnlyFans, right? So that's an area where there's a niche, and you think that you'd have a competitive advantage, but OnlyFans is online. Right. And so people think they're interacting with someone, but what this girl did, and this is going to accelerate, by the way, when you read this article, you see that this girl probably had some money and some backers, where she had a development team that used a model, right, a machine learning model to study her photos, how she talked, her videos, all that kind of stuff, to create a digital composite of her that can respond with a bunch of phrases, basically like she would online. So she's automated her interactions with her OnlyFans. And obviously that took some capital, but now it's been done. And this will just accelerate to where the cost basically gets reduced to zero to create a real life version of you. All you have to do is have the AI, plug in some videos, plug in some photos, plug in your voice, your characteristics. It'll study you, and boom. Next thing you know, you have a AI version of yourself online that can act in your stead, right? And people are paying her $1 a minute to interact with this. It's making like $76,000 a week at this point in time. It's probably going to make more. That's happening now.
I was wondering where this was, because this sounds very much, it sounds Asian. Like it's like the Asia, like they've had K-pop stars that were virtual. Yeah. They've had interactive dolls and toys, for lack of better phrasing, that you can interact with. I could see that going in that direction. There's program. I will say, like, for people who don't know,
Jeff, we got to rate this part. Rated R.
I'm going to keep it clean. For the last 50 years or so, bucket one, last 50 years or so, technology has been driven by the oldest industry in the world.
Yeah.
Like the reason that the VCR became, instead of Betamax, it became VHS, is because VHS allowed adult films on VHS, whereas Betamax did not.
Adult films are the first industry in the world?
The adult industry is the oldest industry in the world.
Yeah, oldest profession.
Oh, yeah.
So that's sex has driven technology for the last 50 plus years. VCRs, DVDs, on-demand TV at the home, OnlyFans, all these things in early adoption. One of the top categories, it's always this on the internet. So this, and in a home video too. So it's not a surprise that innovators are looking for more angles to make more money in the oldest profession by automating stuff, and AI is just another tool in that area. That's all.
People take such great things that could be used for lovely, lovely ideas. Like leaving your grandkids avatar of you. What would grandpa say? And
Well-
they use it and they pervert it, and it is just really sad.
Well, you got to get
How-
funding from somewhere, and like getting funding from like the basic desires of humanity, the basic intersexual dynamics is not a bad way to raise capital. I mean, because what she did there, and they're probably doing this because now they have a ton of money. That model that they used, like the structure, the development they did behind creating that AI avatar of her, that can be then optimized and scaled and basically reduced for a small subscription fee that you can get access and do that and scale to the masses, right? That's what the nature of this technology and why it's so powerful, but also so scary. Because almost overnight you could have all these AI girlfriends now taking over. All these top OnlyFans influencers, they now can basically clone themselves, continue doing OnlyFans in perpetuity for as long as people are willing to pay for an AI form of themselves, and still make money, right? And eventually, like, you'll have people just creating whole new girls and personalities, and there'll be this whole world and backstory of these online characters that don't even exist that are gaining notoriety. And you basically have AI pilots, and it's going to be like, in I forget what movie it was, but where everyone lives in this virtual world. It wasn't Ready Player One, but like there's like the fat guy, the fat slob that can't even get out of his chair is like the hot girl in the brothel in the online world, right? You're going to have that because that guy is going to like outcompete everyone else because it doesn't matter what he looks like. It just matters his strategy in whatever the AI world it is. It's mind blowing. And this technology is going to be so disruptive for things. Yeah, that's all right. I can't not talk about it. It's just like,
no, it's a good
man,
topic.
like, listen, this is important stuff to share with our community because it teaches us something, right? Like, don't believe everything you see. If I saw my current wife and she like inboxed me now, I'd be like, you are an AI robot. You're not real.
well, that's actually a scam that's been going on is they will the scammers will find a person in your family. They will use AI tools to clone your voice, right? And they will use your voice to call a family member to be like, "Hey, I need help, right? I'm hurt, or I like this is actually a legit scam." So if you're listening, pay attention because you can't. You might need to have a safe word between you and your family members. Make sure someone says it because you could get a call, like especially if you're elderly, you can get a call from your grandson or granddaughter, right? Asking for help, asking for you to send them money. And it sounds exactly like them. And this is stuff that's being deployed. And so I think what I see is I see there's opportunity in the digital realm here, and there's opportunity for people who create these companies and can leverage this technology in the short term. But I also see there's going to have to be a shift for where people devote their time and attention to things that AI can't outcompete people on, right? The real world, there's certain areas that AI won't be able to outcompete people on. Like, for example, playing soccer, like playing a soccer match. It's pretty easy. Even if there are androids out there, it's probably still pretty easy to do an android check and make sure that the players on the pitch are humans and not androids.
Oh yeah.
That's a lot easier than verifying is the person online that you're talking to a human or an AI. And so people, if they start valuing the real world things, right, then there'll be money, there'll be opportunities, there'll be needs and things there. And maybe all this competition and all this AI stuff will drive down the value of online stuff. Who knows?
All I know is my wife doesn't ever have to worry about me looking for no digital girlfriends because that sounds like what now? If you can't figure out a woman now, how are you supposed to figure out one that doesn't really even exist? This is not reasonable. I don't want a fake person driving me crazy for the rest of my life and paying for it.
Well, the scary part is she
You have to
figures
edit that part out.
She figures well, the thing is, Patrick, is she figures you out, right? One of the things that the guys that talk to these like OnlyFans models or these cam girls or chat girls, like there's so many men out there that don't have any sort of like real feminine contact, and they're so starved of it. They desire it so much they're willing to go and form these relationships and send money to these women or characters online just because like the girl acts genuinely excited to talk to him. Like she remembers like his birthday or things about him, and he doesn't get that from anyone in his life, right? That's really genuinely sad out there. And the scary thing is like some of the successful cam girl programs out there have teams behind them to help support that, right? But imagine having an AI backing that. So you don't even have to have a team, but the AI remembers everything, right? It remembers all the conversations you have. It remembers your wants, needs, and desires, right? It can even do a psychoanalysis on you to like understand how to have better conversations with you, or to elicit other emotions out of you, right? That stuff's coming. That's going to happen. And it sounds crazy, but like, it's coming.
So my thoughts, just to wrap up this topic here, is Patrick makes more faces and we get ready to wrap up the show for this week.
No,
But
I'm sorry, guys, but that was a very intriguing conversation.
It is.
That was
but
very thought-provoking. I have no idea what the actual freak I think right now.
Well, I mean, we've been kind of conditioned in this direction, right? We've seen movies in this era. We've seen, what was it, Her or She, where the guy falls in love with his phone.
Yeah.
And then Machina. Like there are lots of AI. Yeah, so we've got lots of movies like this, but this goes back to, and this is why, again, I went back to Asians. Like, what countries are having issues with reproduction? Like these countries that are starting to go down these rabbit holes, and is this part of the process? Is this one of the tools that the powers that be are trying to reduce the population are using? You have to think about that area too. So there's a lot to come around, but we've talked about a lot of different things, and somehow we managed to keep it at just under an hour. So Dylan, what are your parting thoughts for today?
Oh man, I think focus on the real world things. Don't discount the real world. The digital world's great. It's scalable. There's opportunity there. There's going to be more opportunity in the near future. But you got to build yourself up in the real world, because that exists, and that will be there for you if you build it there. If you build things online, like you need something in real world, it's not always there. So just keep that in mind.
Patrick, what are your final thoughts for today?
Well, you've been getting me to watch The Last of Us, and as I've been relating a lot of the stuff you're saying with some of the stuff I'm watching, I believe that every American should have a shotgun, because that is the most effective tool for a lot of these things coming at us.
Well, my party, I agree with that, and I have one too. I think everyone should. I agree with that, but I think that in general, like, you got to question everything.
What if there's an AI android robot that comes up to my house at night and looks like my wife, talks like my wife, tricks me, and kills me? Jeff, I don't want to live in this world. Like some of these things that you're talking about, you guys are like, man, I want to go back and like start a new religion where no one's allowed in that has any electronics, like a Mennonite village or something, like, let's go back in time.
1850s. I talk about Little House on the Prairie a lot. I
want to live in that time. I don't want to live in our time anymore, but I am glad that you guys are here helping me be cautiously aware. So I hope you guys are listening, because this stuff is real. This is bucket one, in case they didn't tell you this. This is like not joke.
So as I said, question everything and trust but verify, because you just don't know. And for example, if you want to make sure that you're really talking to Patrick, try to finish the sentence, and he'll probably interrupt you halfway through it, so it's really him.
Yes, absolutely.
But with all that said, I'm going to close out the show and say, be prepared and not scared, and we will see you next time.
I'm not scared.